I was 23 years old, and I thought I knew everything worth knowing about the frontier. That is the only honest way to start this. I'd been riding for the Harker outfit since spring. Good wages, no permanent attachment to anything, which suited me fine. My father had died the winter before, left me a mule and a bedroll and a list of things he'd meant to do, and I'd folded that list up small and put it somewhere I didn't have to look at it. Riding suited a man who didn't want to think. Dry Canyon Range was wide, and the summer had baked it to iron, and I was 2 days out from the line camp when I found her. I almost didn't stop. That is the part I have told my children, and they find it hard to believe, but it is true. I heard the sound first, a short controlled sound, the kind a person makes when they are in pain, and refused to give it more than what it costs them. I pulled up on the crest of the creek bank and looked down, and there she was. A woman, maybe 20 years old, sitting very straight in the dry grass, with her back against a cottonwood root and her right leg caught in a wolf trap that some fool had set along. The water run and never come back for. The trap had closed just above the ankle. She had her hands flat on her knees, and she was looking at the opposite bank the way a person looks at a horizon they have already decided about. She did not look up when my horse came down the bank. I stepped off and crouched at a distance, not close, not stupid, and said, "I'm going to open that." She looked at me then, dark eyes, level and measuring, the way a person looks at a stranger who has said something that may or may not be true. "All right," she said. That was the first thing she ever said to me. I had the trap open in 2 minutes. It had not broken bone. I could see that much. But the iron had bitten deep, and the leg had swollen around it, and she would not walk on it that day, or for several after. I said so. She already knew. She asked where my camp was. I said I didn't have one, but I was riding to the line shack at Painted Mesa. She considered that and said nothing else, and I stood there in the creek bed, holding my hat and feeling, for the first time in months, that I was not entirely certain what I was supposed to do next. "You can't ride on that leg," I said. "No," she agreed. "I'll make camp here." She looked at me again with that measuring look. "For how long? Until you can ride?" I do not know what I expected her to say. Something grateful, maybe. Something that would let me feel useful. She said, "My brother will come. 2 days, maybe 3. He will come to the creek when I am not back." "Then I'll be here when he arrives," I said. She nodded once, and that was the whole of it. I set up camp. Her name was Saya. I learned it that first evening when I brought her water from the upper creek, and she told me without my asking, the way a person tells you something they consider basic courtesy and nothing more. Her people were camped 3 days' ride to the north, and she had crossed this range alone on an errand I gathered was her own business and not mine to ask about. She had a horse. It had spooked at something and was grazing half a mile up the creek, and I went and caught it and brought it in and staked it near mine, and she watched me do it with the same level expression and said, "Thank you." I had ridden across this part of the territory 6 times in 2 years, and I had formed opinions about it the way young men form opinions. Loud, certain, and built on almost nothing. I knew what I thought about the Apache bands that use this range. I knew what the other hands said at the fire, what the trader said in Cutter's Crossing, what the newspaper said when they said anything at all. I thought I had a clear picture. By the end of the first day, I had begun to understand that my picture had been drawn by men who had never sat at a fire with the subject of it. Saya did not explain herself, or her people, or anything she was not asked directly. But she asked me questions, plain-spoken and unhurried, the kind of questions that required actual answers, and not the first thing that came to a man's mouth. She asked what I had done before I rode for the Harker outfit. I told her about the years working my father's place, the dry seasons, the flood year that took the South Field. She asked if my father was living. I said no. She was quiet for a moment, and then she said her mother had died when she was 12, and the camp had not been the same after, and she said it the way a person says a fact that is also the most important fact, and I nodded, and we sat with that for a while, in the way 2 people can sit with a thing when neither one is trying to fill the air. That first night, I fed her from my kit, dried beef and cornbread, an apology of a meal, and she ate without complaint and said it was enough, and I believed her, because she said things she meant and did not say things she didn't. The second day was harder. The wound had stiffened in the night, and the swelling was angry, and she did not say a word about it. I rewrapped it with the strip of clean linen I had in my kit, and she let me, watching my hands the way a person watches something they have decided to trust on a provisional basis. I was careful. I had learned to be careful. My father had been careful with things that were hurt, and I had learned it from watching him, without knowing I was learning it. She noticed. She didn't say anything about it, but she noticed. I was cleaning her horses near Hawk. It had picked up a stone when she said from across the camp, "You are not what I expected." I looked up. What did you expect? What usually rides across this range alone, she said, and looks down from the bank and keeps going. I did not say anything to that because there was nothing to say to it that wasn't a diminishment of something true. I had almost kept going. She knew it and I knew it, and we both let that sit between us like the honest thing it was. That evening she told me about her brother Rael, older than her by 8 years, careful and deliberate, slow to conclusions. She said it the way a person gives you information they think you will need. I understood she was telling me what to expect. I was grateful for it, even if I didn't say so. He will want to know why you stayed, she said. I stayed because you couldn't walk, I said. She shook her head just slightly. He will want to know why you stayed past the first hour. I thought about that. Because it was the right thing, I said, and then I heard how young that sounded, like something printed in almanac. And I said, I don't know a better answer than that. She looked at the fire. That is a better answer than most men would give, she said. The third morning, she stood on the leg and took 3 careful steps and then stopped, and I could see it cost her something, but she filed the cost away without showing the bill. She said it would hold for riding. We packed the camp and she mounted her horse herself. She would have it no other way, and we rode side by side along the creek for a while without talking. The morning still cool enough to breathe easy, and I thought, I don't want this to end. It was the first thing I had thought in months that wasn't about getting somewhere else. Rael came up from the south, with 2 riders before noon. He was a tall man, Saya's same quality of stillness about him, but with more weight behind it. The stillness of a man who had made decisions and would make more and was not troubled by either. He pulled up 20 yards out, and the 2 riders with him stopped when he stopped. He looked at me the way he looked at his sister's leg, long, thorough, working from fact and not from judgment. Saya spoke to him in their language. I did not understand the words, but I understood the shape of it. She was giving him a full account, not a shortened one, and I understood that she did not lie to him, and that he knew she did not lie to him, and that this was the ground they stood on together. He listened without interrupting. When she finished, he looked at me again. You stayed 3 days, he said. His English was deliberate, each word set down like something that would be held to. Yes, I said. You had somewhere to be. The line shack at Painted Mesa. It'll keep. He was quiet. One of the riders behind him said something low, and Rael raised one hand without looking back, and the man stopped. You could have ridden on, Rael said. I could have, I said. I thought about it. I don't know why I said that last part. I think because he would have seen through anything less. He looked at me a long moment, and then he said, You thought about it, and you didn't. That's right. The horses stood easy in the sun. Rael glanced at Saya, and something passed between them that I wasn't part of, and wasn't meant to be part of, and then he looked back at me and gave a single slow nod, not warm, not cold. The kind of nod a man gives when he has arrived at a conclusion and is not going to belabor it. He said something to Saya in their language. She answered briefly. He nodded again. Then he turned his horse north, and the 2 riders turned with him, and they rode. Saya had not moved. She sat her horse looking after them, and I sat mine and did not say anything, because I have learned over the years that silence is the correct response to more situations than a young man thinks. After a moment, she turned and looked at me. He said, You may follow, she said. I looked at her. Is that what you want? She held my gaze, and there was that measuring look again, the one I had first seen from the creek bank. Only now I understood what it was measuring for. She was not waiting for me to make a decision for her. She was deciding. Yes, she said, if you are willing to be learned slowly. I thought about the folded list in my pocket. I thought about the line shack at Painted Mesa and the Harker outfit and the months of riding toward nothing in particular. I'm a patient man. She raised her eyebrows just slightly. You were not 3 days ago. No, I said. I wasn't. She turned her horse north. I turned mine beside hers. We rode at an easy pace, the Painted Mesa falling behind us, the morning opening wide and clean ahead. I will not pretend it was simple after that. Rael's patience for me was real, but it was not endless, and I had to earn what I was given one day at a time, and there were days I earned less than I'd hoped. Saya did not smooth the way for me. That was never her manner, and I came to understand that her not smoothing the way was the greatest respect she could have paid me. She believed I was capable of finding my footing without her carrying me to it. She was mostly right. I learned things that year I could not have been told. I learned that I had been carrying a picture of the world that other men had painted, and that the painting had been careless, and the painter had not much cared about accuracy. I learned that grief does not have to make a man small if he will let it pass through him instead of sitting down in it. I learned that there is a kind of quiet that is not emptiness, the kind that lives between 2 people who have said the true things and don't need to keep saying them. We were married in the spring, in the manner of her people first, and then, at my asking, in the manner of mine, a preacher rode out from the settlement at Ironbow, a thin, serious man who looked around at the camp and at Saya and said the words with all the dignity they deserved. Rael stood at her side. The two riders who had come south with him stood behind. I had no family left to stand with me, but I did not feel the lack of it. I felt the presence of what I had been given instead. I never did make it to the line shack at Painted Mesa that summer. The Harker outfit hired another man, and I sent word that I would not be coming back, and that was the end of that chapter. There were other chapters after, some hard, some not, and I would not trade a single one of them for the easy ride I thought I was entitled to when I was 23 years old. My daughter asked me once why I had stopped at the creek. She was 12, her mother's eyes, her mother's way of asking a question that required a real answer. I said because I almost didn't, and something in me knew that would have been the worst thing I ever did. She thought about that. What was the worst thing before that? I said I didn't think I'd done anything bad enough yet to count. She looked at me the way her mother looks at me, patient, seeing through what I said to the thing I meant. You stopped, she said. That's what matters. I told her she sounded like her Uncle Rael. She smiled and said she had learned from the best, and I thought, yes, so had I. The frontier will teach a man plenty if he will let it, if he will pull up on the bank and look down and choose not to keep riding. I was lucky enough to learn that young. I was lucky enough to learn it from a woman who did not owe me a single lesson and gave me every one I needed. Some debts you spend the rest of your life being glad you owe.